Hey, this is Robert Monroe, and we're going to talk about sight reading. And this may be a little bit silly because I don't have an instrument in front of me, and we're not going to do any playing today. And so you may go, wait a second, this is a music channel. Why are you not going to play anything? Well, we're going to try this sort of podcast style to see if it works, to see if this conveys information well. And so I can just kind of rant for a while, and you guys can pick up some tidbits. So I've got a few different questions in my head that I'm going to hopefully give you some insight on. And the first is, how do I become the most badass, amazing sight reader who's ever lived? And I've got some insights on that. And if you follow my live streams at all, you know I'm pretty good at sight reading. I'm not the best. There's obviously people better than me, but I know my way around a piece of sheet music. So what are some best practices about how you get good at sight reading? I'm going to give you the really obvious one first, and then I'm going to give you some less obvious ones that you may be missing. So the first really obvious one is you just got to do it. So if you think about reading a book, how do you get good at reading? You read. If you are not every single day seeing at least one new measure of music, then you're doing yourself a disservice. If you think that you're going to get good at sight reading, you're not going to get good at sight reading. Sight reading is going to involve looking at new music daily. That's the only way. That's literally the only way. If that's the kick in the butt you needed, well, you got that kick in the butt. You can leave the video. You're done, right? Now, maybe you want some more tidbits. I got some more tidbits. I got lots of tidbits. That's the thing. When you play music all the time for decades, this point in my life, it has been decades. That's kind of crazy to think. But it has. Then you get a lot of tidbits. So we got the main tidbit that I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't just get out of the way. Let's talk about some others. I think this is another one that people just blow, and it's kind of crazy because it's super obvious as well. And that is time signature, key signature, composer, title, tempo markings. What am I talking about? There's all of this information before you even play a note. And if you are not using that to the best of your ability, again, what are you doing? Like, why are you even working on the piece? So the first one that's super obvious is title. Well, what does a title help you with a piece of music? The first thing it does is it gives you a lot of context. Like, let's say we're playing Clair de Lune. Boom, immediately. We know a lot from that. Let's say the piece was written by Chopin. That gives us a lot of information too. Now you may be going, okay, what information does that stuff give you, especially if you're not familiar with the title or with the composer? Well, let me give you another example. Let's say the title says Minuet in G minor. Okay, I'm going to give you a lot of information you can figure out from that. First of all, minuet. What is a minuet? A minuet is a dance, typically in 3/4. Not as intense as a waltz. We're not going to emphasize beat one a lot. It's a lot gentler than a waltz. But what does dance give us? It gives us that the tempo needs to be steady. It gives us that there's going to be this momentum going through the piece. That feeling of frivolity and forward movement is going to be very, very important. What about in G minor? Well, now we know the key. Also, minuet is going to infer as well a time period. Why do we know this? Because people didn't write minuets like crazy in the 1900s. They wrote minuets mostly in the late 1700s. That's just what happened. So all of these details actually give you huge insights into what you're sight reading. Let's go over to the composer for a second. Let's say they got a weird name like Kabalevsky. Does that sound weird to you? It sounds a little weird to me. Well, I actually like to point that out right away, that if something sounds weird, that probably means that there's something there, right? Like, it's different. So if I hear a name that I'm used to, it's probably going to sound like something I'm used to. But if something is something that I'm not familiar with, it's going to probably sound like something I'm not familiar with. It actually makes a huge difference. And this will be a recurring theme when we talk through any of these things. Expectations are super important. If I can know ahead of time what something's going to sound like, it's going to be that much easier to play. So what if it's a composer that I do know their name? Well, then I can also infer more from that. So let's say it's J.S. Bach. Well, I'm probably going to have to prepare for some counterpoint. But at the same time, it's probably not going to just randomly play notes outside of the key, unless it's one of his chromatic pieces, but that's for another day. So all of this is painting a picture where it's very powerful to understand even little tiny details from the title and the composer. Let's go to time signature and key signature. 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, 2/4. All of these things tell us details of how to interpret and how to play the piece and structure and count the piece. Same with key signature. If I know the key of something, I can practice a ton before I even play a single note sight reading the piece. G major, okay, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? And then all the chords, G major chord, A minor chord, B minor chord, C major chord. You get the idea. All of this can be hugely beneficial to sight reading the piece. One more thing before we get into the piece, actually, and that is tempo marking. Now, the tempo marking is an interesting one because in many ways it's mostly about the character, because I'm going to go into the next tidbit that is fairly obvious. But again, like all these things, I think they're fairly obvious because I do all of them. You may not think they're fairly obvious because you may not do any of them. So the next tidbit would be go slower than you think. So actually, finishing up with the tempo for just 1 second. Tempo marking is going to tell you about the character, right? So it may give you descriptive words like, fun, joyous, energetic, but then it'll also give you like what the overall tempo is. In general, faster pieces are less dense and slower pieces are more dense. What does that mean? It means like how many notes are in each measure, the harmonic density, how quickly the notes change in terms of their harmonic content, stuff like that. So even the tempo marking actually gives us ideas and things to understand about the piece. But that gets us back into the tidbit I just mentioned, which is go slower than you think. Now, this is actually getting a little bit into the two different ways that you can practice sight reading, but let's just imagine that we're playing in time for a second. If we go slow enough, we theoretically can play a piece even if it's the first time we played it perfectly. There is a theoretical limit. Now, it may be playing one note every 5 days and we're not done until the second coming, or it may be that you have to play it at 40 BPM. All of these are possible, and it may be slow enough that we actually can play every note perfectly. As in a fantastic way to work on sight reading, because you're practicing a couple things. You're practicing discipline, so you're making sure that you're playing every note perfectly, and you're still understanding the piece in some context of time. Now, you could do this with the metronome. You could do this counting out loud. You could just do this super duper duper slowly. That really gives you the ability to understand what you're playing. Because if you are just playing a bunch of wrong notes, you are not really actually getting much better at sight reading. Now, I'm going to contradict myself because there's another way to practice sight reading, and that is the exact opposite. You go, you know what? Screw the notes. I don't need to play right notes. I need to play it in time. And so what do? You set the metronome to something pretty aggressive, or you just challenge yourself to play at a pretty aggressive tempo, and you go, I cannot stop, even if I hit a bunch of wrong notes. What is this practice? This practice is the momentum. This practice is the feel, the vibe of it. Sometimes this is non-negotiable. Maybe you're actually accompanying somebody and you didn't do your homework and practice, and so you're just sitting there and the clarinet concerto has to happen and it's at somebody's recital and maybe you should have practiced, but you were busy because you had a million other things to do because you were in college. Oh, wait, that was me. Anyway, it happens, and you just have to keep going even when you're making a bunch of mistakes and you turn the page to the wrong page. It just happens. That is a very good way to practice. So now I want to talk about if you're really a beginner, what to do then. And then I want to talk about one more really advanced technique with sight reading, and then we got to wrap up. So let's first talk about if you're a beginner. Beginner. I think you've got two major options of how to approach it. Specifically talking about piano, by the way, but this is true of any instrument. It's just easier with other instruments. Piano, the big problem is you have the grand staff, right? You have treble and bass, and oftentimes multiple notes on both. So what do? You've got tons of notes everywhere you want to sight read. Simplify. There is a range where it's going to be easy enough you can play it. Is that just the soprano line, which is the top line? Is it just the bass line, which is the very bottom line? Whatever it is, do that first. And maybe learn 4 to 8 measures that way. After that, what you may have to do is then go, okay, all right, I simplified, I've done my thing. Well, now what I need to do is I need to figure out a way to grow from here. So what do? You start adding more stuff together. So you can put together the bass line and the treble line. Or you can put together 2 lines in each hand. So maybe you play all of the treble clef or all of the bass clef. All of this leads you to a place where you can compound and grow your skills. Now, this is going to go back to something I said at the beginning. Consistently over time. Not all at once. The chances of you being able to put this all together all at once are basically 0. That's why you're not very good at sight reading. You have to take time every day. And if you take time every day, guess what? You will get there. Now, for my advanced folks, you need to learn how to analyze harmony and understand chords. Because the truth is, amazing sight readers are not reading the notes. Amazing sight readers are reading the shapes, and they are making assumptions nonstop. So basically, when a sight reader looks at a piece of music, they're assuming which notes exist because of the look of the piece, the style of the piece, and the harmonic content and what they've played before. So the sooner you can get good at making assumptions, the easier a piece of music will actually genuinely be. If you've enjoyed this, fantastic. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe, like, comment, all that jazz. I'd love to just maybe do some more episodes like this. I need to come up with a name. But until next time, thanks so much and have a wonderful week of filled with amazing practicing.